Okay, speaking of bringing faculty to you, that's my part here. As Rob said a few minutes ago, my name is Ben Graydon. I'm a full-time faculty member at Daytona State College, which is just down the interstate in Daytona Beach here in Florida. And just to sort of set some context here, I'm going to be talking in fairly specific terms, as concretely as I can about, okay, you make a decision to go e-text or to use digital textbooks. How does that work in a classroom? Like, how does it change the way you do lessons? How does it change the way students interact? What kind of adaptations do you have to make? I'm going to be talking about some things that I screwed up, that I did wrong, since that's usually the juicier story to tell. But just for some broader context before I get into that, being a full-time faculty member for me means teaching 5 courses a semester. I teach only writing courses. For those of you who are here in Florida and you're familiar with the numbering system, that's ENC 1101 and 1102. So every semester I have a new batch of 100 to 125 writing students. That sort of changes the context a little bit. We've been talking about testing and exams, and I don't do any of that. My students are learning to write, and so when we look at assessment and how students learn and whether the e-text is contributing to that, just know that that's the perspective that I am coming from. So a little bit of additional context. Daytona State College has been interested in e-text for several years now. Going back to about 2008 or 2009, we said, okay, this looks to be a direction we can go to increase access, to increase affordability. Those are central parts of our mission, and so we wanted to get started. We created an e-text initiative, and basically this was just a group of interested folks at the college who wanted to kind of investigate and learn more. We created a web page where we sort of charted our efforts and started to talk things up around the state so that we could pool our knowledge with projects that were going on elsewhere. Our initiative got a big boost in late 2009 when we received a grant from FIPSE, the Fund for the Improvement of Postsecondary Education. This grant allowed us to actually conduct a 2-year pilot study comparing different textbook distribution models. So we said, you know, the reason or the way to figure out whether we want to use e-texts or digital textbooks is to compare them with what we've got now. And let's do that in a rigorous, controlled study. We taught sections of an entry-level economics course and sections of a college composition course, ENC 1101, with 4 different textbook distribution models. The usual one, buy the book from the bookstore or wherever, buy a printed book. That was number 1. Number 2, rent a printed book. Number 3, rent an e-text or a digital book. That means basically what some of our other speakers have said, buying access for a limited period of time to an electronic text. Our 4th group was a group of students who rented an e-text and the college provided them with a device to read it on. So we designed the study in 2009. Netbooks, if you can remember back that long, were sort of the hot thing at that time. So we were using netbooks, and of course our results were influenced by that fact. The study is now complete, and I and 2 other people sort of wrote up a description of it and the results. We published it last December in EduClass Quarterly, and if you, later on, I think these materials are going to be made available or they're on the flash drives. This is all linked through, so you can check out that study if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the whole thing. I want to talk more about my kind of personal experiences in the classroom. And when I say classroom, I'm thinking about this. These are pictures of actual classrooms that I use. We've been talking about, you know, what an e-text looks like, how are you going to use it. Note that the desks are in rows. There's not a lot of space. There are a couple of power outlets on the walls. This is what it looks like. It's directed toward that screen. So you just kind of have to think about the space. And you're seeing what I was seeing as I was teaching with e-texts. Some broader context. ENC 1101, College Composition, is the course I was teaching. This is a basic composition course. It's one of the college's major offerings. There are many, many, many sections, and students in just about every single program take this course. So I've got students ranging in age from 15 up into their 60s. I've got future occupational therapists, computer scientists, even like automotive technicians. They're all in the course, so it's a very, very diverse group. The e-text that I used was a Pearson product, so shout out to the Pearson folks. up here in front of me. They have a sort of series of products. One is called MyCompLab. If you've heard of my math lab, my literature lab, my writing lab, there's a bunch of them. And they are online interfaces separate from the LMS. So we use Desire to Learn, D2L. My students had to use that, and they had to learn to use MyCompLab. This is the login screen. This is the sort of course homepage. You'll see that MyCompLab, which is the only way to access this Pearson e-text, is set up like an LMS. You can do all the course stuff there. We only used it for the e-text because students were already using Desire to Learn for all of their other courses. So this is what the course page looks like. This is what the e-text looks like. You can see it's basically a digitized book. There's a menu on the left with a table of contents. There are tools up here on the top, highlighting, annotation, searching, etc. So this is what students were learning to use, and I want to describe some experiments I tried in the context of a particular assignment. This is the assignment that I start off the course with. It's a reflective essay. Reflective writing is something that many students are already familiar with. They do it all the time. It's personal storytelling for a purpose. So you have students kind of think about major experiences in their lives, write those up in essay form, but in a selective, technique-driven way that really emphasizes the meaning of those experiences or why they were important. Experiment number 1. During the unit that focuses on the reflective essay, of course I have students read a lot of example reflective essays. They go to the e-text, they read the example essays. Here's one by David Sedaris, who's a very popular comic writer. It's an essay called Let It Snow. First thing I tried to just see what I could do with the e-text was adding explanatory notes and discussion questions, using the share tool, using the insert comments tool. I would sort of add some instructions at various points. You see the little push pin icon there. I'm asking students to consider some things while they would read. Then we would get to class and I would direct discussion toward those particular questions. What I found by doing this was that students, they became smarter readers. They became better readers because they had more focus. They knew what was going to happen in class. They could prepare a little bit more. It was very, very hard to ascertain whether this actually made them stronger writers. That was my goal, which was to make them stronger writers. Using the technology, I think I saw the reading pick up a little bit, but it was hard to tell with the writing part. Here you see what the student view looks like. So it kind of pops up. It obscures part of the actual essay. I couldn't really get away around that, but it was a way of getting those comments there. Experiment number 2. Relatedly, I tried inserting links to external content. So this would be OER stuff, YouTube videos, author web pages, publications on the web, things like that. What you see here in this comment, I know it's probably not very easy to see from the back, is a link to Sedaris and the David Letterman show. The point of asking students to watch that is so that they can see Sedaris live performing, but also you get a sense of how he translates his own particular kind of quirky voice into print. So we can listen to him talk on the spot, and then we can go to the essay and say, here's how he renders his voice in actual written language, which is a technique that the students get really excited about because they get to use slang and they get to kind of write the way that they actually speak, which most of the classes relentlessly drill out of them. I try to get a little bit of that back in, so this is one manner that I tried to do that. Third experiment, during class, and remember, visualize that classroom that we're in. So normally everybody's got a book in front of them, they're reading on their own, they can turn and be on different pages at the same time. With the e-text, unless they brought in their own laptop, they had their own device, we're all looking at the screen. Everybody's looking at that screen, so I said, well, one thing I can do to take advantage of that is mark it up. Students say, okay, this was important, this stuck out to me. So I highlight it, I underline it, I share that through these sort of social annotation capabilities of the e-text, and then they can go back later and have all of that classroom discussion preserved. As with the first experiment, the second two I noticed, they made students smarter readers. They picked up on more, they remembered more, they seemed to be able to point out in other people's writing the techniques that I wanted to teach them, and they could talk about that. But I had a hard time really knowing whether this actually strengthened their own writing. And I just point that out because a lot of the focus on technology and in higher education more generally is about testing. It's about exams. Can you choose the correct answer from among a number of choices? For me, one of the most exciting things about these new technologies is that they help students become producers. They become producers of content, and I think this is a higher level way of assessing whether students are actually learning anything. That's one of the things I love about teaching writing, but so far, not really sure whether this was helping me in that project. So I just want to wrap up pretty quickly with kind of 3 main points. I'm not sure everybody's going to agree with these, but this is just the perspective I have. Number 1, it's your e-text. Own it. This pertains to the experience of being a faculty member teaching with an electronic textbook. Many of my students, some of them have been avoiding computers their entire lives, deliberately and strategically. And they get in that classroom and they don't want to do it, and you have to say, okay, not only do you need to do, this is a requirement, right? This is a requirement. And they say, well, you know, I've been avoiding computers. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And their eyeballs are on you, and you got 2 choices. You can say, go talk to the help desk. Or, because you're the instructor, you say, okay, I'm going to take an hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes. This is now the content of the course. This is now something that I'm teaching along with writing, along with history, along with whatever. I think it's the faculty's responsibility to become a technical instructor when and as necessary. Number 2, I think student learning outcomes matter. You heard me just saying my primary outcome in this course is to make students stronger writers, and I was doing things with the e-text, and I'm not sure that it was connecting with that outcome. So I think the decision to adopt an e-text or not needs to be driven by student learning outcomes. If you get more success in relation to those outcomes, do it. If you don't, then maybe you want to rethink that decision. Number 3, I think students need something in addition to spending less money out of the whole e-text experience. They like spending less money, right? Who doesn't? But a week later, 2 weeks later, 6 weeks into a course, many students don't even remember. They don't even remember what they have spent on that textbook. What they do remember is the hassle it may be giving them right now, trying to learn new skills, trying to navigate in a digital environment. They need an intellectual payoff. They need clear, demonstrable academic benefits. I think instructors need to be able to say to students, okay, here's why we're using this tool, and here's what you're learning that you wouldn't be learning otherwise. If you can't make that case to students, you might have to rethink the decision. Those are 3 keys that I think will help enable instructor success in the classroom. And I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker. If you have questions, I would love to entertain those, but let's do those at the end of the panel. Thanks very much.